Thank you so much for joining us for All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Milo. Now, last September, the Supreme Court ruled that security guards at private security firm Marksman were employees and not independent contractors, and as such, they were entitled to benefits including, for instance, paid sick leave, paid vacation leave, and paid maternity leave. Now, since then, guards have been asking us, they stop me, they message me on Twitter, they email us, and they ask, how come nothing has changed? But then came news that the Jamaica Association of Private Security, which represents the guards, had agreed to wait until April 1 to see the changes implemented. So Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke also announced in January that the government will ensure that any private security firm that has government contracts will have to treat their guards as employees. So what exactly will happen on April 1? What's happening now? And why are some guards still concerned? Joining me in studio this evening, we have Teddy Lee Gray, president of the Jamaica Association of Private Security, which represents the guards. We have Lieutenant Commander George Overton. He's president of the Jamaica Society for Industrial Security. St. Patrice Ennis with us as well, General Secretary of UTAS, the Union of Technical, Administrative and Supervisory Personnel, and labor law expert Carla Ann Roper Harris, Principal Consultant at Employment Matters Caribbean. Great to have you all on. Thank you so much. Mr. Gray, let me start with you, if I could, Mr. Gray, and from the perspective of the guards, tell us what's been happening.
So one of the main, first of all, good night everyone, good night to the panelists. One of the major concerns is regards to communication from the security companies. They're not communicating with the security officers enough. So therefore a lot of security officers have a lot of concern. So one of the main concerns is the years of service. You know, you have security officers working for over 30 years. Now some of them are hearing that April the 1st they have to re-sign back over new contracts. So that's one of the biggest concern for most security officers.
So people not fully understanding what are the implications, what's going to be their status, and whether or not there are any kind of retroactive entitlements.
So for example, 4 major security companies, come out and say they're going to turn their security officers into employees, but we have over 300 registered security companies, so wow. A lot don't know, what's going to go on, but the government should have maybe gone further, to tell all the companies them to come on board. But they're persuading them at the moment, so hopefully April the 1st, 31 more days, all of us will be employees.
And just before I let you go, just before I leave you for a moment, when you say concerns about communication, you're talking about because there are so many different companies. Because we've seen some memos, say, from Marksman to security guards that seem to suggest there was ongoing information.
All right, so they're just sending out memos and not communicating with their security officers. So therefore, sometimes we have to be explaining certain things, to the security officers.
Okay, so people have questions and they don't feel they're being answered.
They don't get any.
All right, well, let me bring you in here, Lieutenant Commander Overton, because what's been happening from your end?
Okay, from the date of the ruling, I've been out there speaking to the government, as Teddy Lee just said, trying to get a policy position from government. That has not been forthcoming. And we as an industry and the association, Jamaica Society for Industrial Security, took a position that our membership would fall in line and make every effort to be compliant on April 1. Since then, we have been sensitizing our clients, we have been sensitizing our guards as to what the situation is. And what we are now doing is in the process of settling rates with our clients, because at the end of the day, somebody has to pay this increased cost. And so rate increase letters have gone out, the negotiations are going on, and come April 1, those rates have to be settled because we have given a commitment to compliance on April 1. And some very tough business decisions will have to be taken prior to April 1. Who is not on board with the rates may have to be left seeking service elsewhere.
I want to ask you about the implication of the announcement that the finance minister made in January, but I think we have that clip already now. Can we bring that up? Because the finance minister said, as I mentioned earlier, that the government would ensure that any company that has a government contract would have to treat their guards as employees.
I think he went a little further than that, Dion.
Well, let's take a look.
I'm very pleased to announce today the appointment of a task force to engage over the next 100 days with security guard firms, and 100 days takes you to the end of April, with security guard firms who have contracts with the government of Jamaica with a view to amending all of these contracts.
What's been the impact of that?
Okay, what the minister said was that he was creating a task force to review government contracts with private security firms. Under the Public Procurement Committee, you cannot vary contract rates more than 15% without going back to tender. So what it would have meant is that government would have to shut down all the security services whilst they retender everything to meet the new rate structure. So he created this task force to look at the rate structure, open up these contracts with the various ministries, departments, and agencies to ensure that what we have said is the increased cost. Come to some agreement on that so that these contracts can be restated in terms of contract value without having to go back to tender at this point in time. So what the government said is we are making every effort to meet the increased costs so that the companies can become compliant come April 1. And the expectation is post-April 1, those who are not compliant, the government will be going after. The first step is that if you are not compliant, you will not be eligible for a government contract. Okay. And thereafter, those who believe they can fly under the radar will be sought and dealt with.
All right. So, Carla, you first. What do you think of what you've heard so far?
It's very interesting because the fact that government contracts are being examined in that way, it's very good. But there are a swath of other businesses that do not fall under the government's aegis. And so unless there is some legislated position, it is going to be left up to the good graces of the companies, you know, if they want to say that they are corporate social responsibility. This is what they want to put forward as their brand, then they will, in terms of the negotiations that are going on, fall within that line. But outside of that, it's going to be quite interesting to see how private sector companies approach this issue of security services with the security service providers.
But surely that can't be the best way to go, because I know when we spoke to, for instance, and I say Commander Overton laughing there, because I know when we spoke to John Azar about this, one of his concerns was that you would have some companies would comply, others wouldn't, and therefore would be able to undercut significantly on rates.
Exactly.
So surely this can't be the best way to go. It sounds very messy.
I would agree with you. It's Commander Overton said it requires a policy decision from the government, which the policy would then be translated into legislative framework. And part of the problem has come up because there's a patchwork of legislative provisions that deal with the security officers. You have the Private Security Regulation Authority and that act that deals with the registration. You have the Ministry of Labour and Social Security that deals with the minimum standards of pay. You have the Finance Ministry and Income Tax that deals with how they should be paid. And then you have all the myriads of other statutory bodies, which
Don't leave out the FLA.
Yes, the FLA.
All right, hold that thought, because I want to pick up and come to St. Patrice Ennis as well. Remember, you can participate. You can WhatsApp us on 3810072. Give us your first name, your general location. Tweet us as well, #TVJ, all angles will soon come.